Are you a project manager thinking about leaving your role, burning out, or just needing a change of pace? Here's what to consider before making that leap. Welcome to Better Projects Today, the bite-sized project management podcast helping you to bridge theory and practice in your own work to create better teams, better results, and better projects today. I'm Tyler Norman, and I bring 15 years of experience as a global program leader and mentor. Today's topic is based on a set of questions that I get quite a bit, and I'll omit names for obvious reasons, but I've had a few folks ask recently on LinkedIn. Essentially, they all express different forms of burnout or frustration with their current project management role and asked if it was time to quit, what I would recommend doing, what should they do next. Project management can be very rewarding, but it can also be very overwhelming and challenging at times. And with that, things like imposter syndrome and frustration can often come to the forefront. If you found yourself at a point where you're considering leaving a role, it's important to pause and take stock of what the situation really is before you make any decisions. What often feels like the end of a career or the end of a role could really be something with an actionable solution. And with that, having gotten this question many times over the years, I've boiled down some next steps into a 5-step action plan. Starting, identify the root cause or causes of your issue with the role. The first step in resolving any issue, we know as project managers, is identifying the root cause of the issue. Are you frustrated because of a particular project and some complexities in it? Is there a person or a group of people that makes your job really difficult? Is it systemic? Is it, you're kept late at the office and it's causing stress at home? You're on the road a lot? Is it cultural, structural? Take some time to really think about this and think about not just your feelings, but what is happening in the workplace that's driving those feelings. You can use common root cause tools here like 5 whys, or fishbone analysis, whatever it is. But when I get this question and when someone's ready to step away, the first thing I do is dig in with what's the true root cause of these feelings. Next, now that you've identified the root cause, analyze the problem the way you would with any issue that came up during one of your projects. Think about things like, is this problem tied to a specific project, person, organization itself? Is it time bound or is it going to go on for a very long time? Is it going to resolve itself at some point in the future, or is it something that you're going to have to take action to overcome? Are you the only person in the org that's feeling this, or are there others? Is it more systemic in nature? Give this some real thought and analyze so that you truly understand the problem in its entirety. Next, identify potential solutions to overcome that problem. A lot of times the first place we go is, I'm out, I'm leaving, that's a solution. And yes, it is a solution, but there's probably a lot more that you haven't thought of yet. If it's a project that you're having a really hard time with and frustrated with, can you ask to be transferred off the project as an option? Can you ask for someone else to get involved and help? Can you ask for additional horsepower, mentorship? Begin to line out all of those solutions and think about how much they would help, how much institutional goodwill would you have to burn to ask for it or to get it. Really, the key here is just get it all on paper. Again, we often reach for I'm leaving my job as the first solution, but there's probably a lot more solutions that could happen here. An example I think of and that I'll refer to on some future steps is early in my career, I had a specific gentleman with a specific customer organization that he was commercial construction and he was a yeller. He was a guy that could get things done on a project and he was effective as a superintendent because he would scream and yell and people would say yes. Somebody would come to him with a change request because something was out of scope and he'd scream and yell and they'd go do it without asking for more money. Someone would say they need a delay on a certain scope item and he would scream and yell and they'd get more people there. He was the squeakiest wheel, and so he would get the grease. And that guy, I had a really, really hard time with him. I would get Sunday morning calls, Friday evening calls, and it was really bothering me to the point that I was ready to be done. And when I thought about solutions, I could ask to be taken off the project. They were a big customer, and the fact that I'd been asked to manage these big projects, I didn't like what would come along with asking for that. I could leave my job, obviously. I could stop answering his calls. I had lots of potential solutions, but it wasn't until I took the time to write them down that they really started to become clear. On to our next step, determine your BATNA, or best alternative to a negotiated agreement. And this is a concept from negotiation planning, and it's essentially what's my best alternative to fixing it. You could think of this as, if I walk away from the negotiating table, what's my fallback plan? And this helps you clarify how willing you are to invest in finding solutions. You could think of this as, if you've got that friend from college that's been trying to get you to come work at his company forever, and your best alternative to fixing things with your current employer is to go there, you may have a pretty solid BATNA. If leaving your current role, you're the only source of income for your house and you've got a few kids at home, and you would start burning savings quickly, that's not a very strong BATNA. The key here is to understand that staying may be your best option, or what are your options. Last step here, take action, even if that action is to wait and find a means to maintain sanity in the interim. So we've root caused our problem. We've analyzed it. We've identified potential solutions. We understand our BATNA. Now it's time to take action. If you've identified a time-bound issue, maybe just waiting it out, doing some mental sanity work on the side, that might be your course of action. You could also work on setting boundaries. That could be your action. So the example I gave earlier, the gentleman the yeller that seemed to enjoy driving me crazy, I decided I was going to stop answering calls outside of a certain time-bound measure. And when he started screaming, I was going to stop engaging. And I talked to my boss about this, and he didn't love it, but he said, I get it. And I explained, I'm getting to the point I'm coming to my wit's end a little bit, and this is a step I'm taking, and my boss understood. So I quit answering the Sunday morning, the Friday evening calls, and they stopped coming. At a job site meeting a couple weeks later, he starts screaming, and I got up and walked away from the table, and he's following me, and he finally calms down for a second. And I said, when you're done yelling, we'll keep talking. And what was funny is I had to do that about 3 or 4 times, and then he quit yelling with me for the most part. And that was a solution that I never would have thought about it if I hadn't put them on paper. One other very funny thing that comes here when you start taking actions to maintain your sanity in the interim to try to overcome the problem. This is something that I've experienced in the past, and I've also heard from many people I've mentored. When you start defining boundaries, when you start taking those steps that you sort of think to yourself, if I get fired for this, I'm fine with it. This is what I need to do to stay here. You may find that you end up enjoying your job more. Same employer a little bit later on from when I dealt with the difficult gentleman. Lots and lots of travel was starting to occur. It was starting to cause some problems at home, and I was getting a little bit frustrated again, and I drew a little bit of a line in the sand and said, I have job sites in other states. I'm willing to travel to X amount per month, but I'm drawing a hard line there, and I can't do more because I got to take care of things at home. When I did that, all of a sudden I started enjoying the job like I hadn't in quite some time. You will likely find, if you take some steps, to try to overcome those problems and to set boundaries, whatever it is, ask to be taken off of that challenging project, you may find that job you were ready to leave all of a sudden becomes something you really enjoy. In conclusion, calling it quits on a roll is a big deal, and I'm definitely hoping it doesn't come across that I'm advocating for outlast any job. Some jobs aren't going to be fixed, but if you follow these steps and you fully understand your problem and you've understood the potential solutions to overcome that problem, you've tried some things, if you get to a point that you have to leave the job, you'll do so with confidence that you're making the right decision because you've fully exhausted all opportunities to make it work in your current role with your current employer. And you may find along the way, you actually like it there quite a bit. This brings us to the end of the episode. I hope you found value in the material and can apply it in your own work. If so, or if you have any topics or questions you'd like to see addressed in future episodes, please leave a comment below.